let's go to remember that we start 10 minutes before. Remember that we have after Oier the second session today with Torsten, the second part. Well, here really I'm pleasure to introduce the talk of Oier. Oier is a PhD student in the industry and was working with students in a summer school project with other colleagues from Abu Dhabi, from Bilbao, Jesus from Granada, and no more. 4 people, and they choose a project about explainability, governance, and trustworthy. And the idea of them was a very interesting idea. He will explain was to pick up a real problem and then to use the real problem to conduct or to prepare the proposal. Well, really a very good proposal. And after the proposal, I proposed them to continue working in the proposal. They were working, I remember when it was submitted, around November, the paper. Yeah. Around November, more or less, they were working after the summer. Jesus was here, because Jesus is there. And they were working in the paper, and it was submitted in November. Received a major revision, normal major revision. Well, they were working, and then I was supporting more than with the discussion with the reviewers, and we decided to have the presentation because it really was a necessary work, and really between was agreed to have the presentation and the organization, the final organization, what they received the acceptance, the final acceptance one more ago.
Yeah, a month ago.
One month ago was accepted the paper. The referee was happy with the dashboard. It was not so difficult to update the paper according to the reviewers' comment. They were very positive and constructive opinions. Really, the paper was improved, and finally we are very happy because it was affected. It was the first paper of a student collaborating in the summer school. Some students were collaborating more at the beginning, others finished the paper depending on the time. There was a mixed team with different knowledge from philosophy, Jesus, computer science, economy,
You're starting to say my slides, you know?
Sorry, because go ahead. Sorry.
No, don't worry, yes. Paco. First of all, Paco, thank you for your warm words, and of course, thank you, Amelie, and the organization for the opportunity to be here. As Paco mentioned, I am Oier Mentxaka, and I do my PhD here on AI auditing in DASI. Oops. And today I want to open this session with the question you have here on the screen. What if your freedom was decided by a secret algorithm? Well, this is not a hypothetical question. It already happened during a lot of years here in Spain, and the system who rose the question was called RISC-V. This presentation, as Paco introduced, is about how we managed to get from the summer school project into a Springer Nature scientific paper. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So everything began last year. Last year in May, and we started collaborating on this Idea Lab summer school when an uncomfortable conversation appeared on the table. Nacho and Nuria did really well with the work teams, and sat in the same table, really different mindsets. We were a philosopher who seated there in the back part of the room, me knowing auditing techniques, social scientist who is not today here, and other 2 ADIA mates that were computer scientists. So you can imagine that very different mindsets and very different people were sat around the same table with the same question. Can we trust an AI that decides about our lives? And that was the beginning of the summer schools project, this question. We started thinking about different use cases. You may have heard about Compass in the US prison system, or about some hiring algorithms, such as the one Amazon had with discriminatory outcomes, or even with the credit scoring systems on the financial sector. These were some use cases we thought about, but all felt really distant to us, although they were really concerning regarding their opacity. Gathering on the internet and searching for a bit of information, we suddenly saw RiskAmbi. RiskAmbi is a prison risk assessment tool that has been using in Spain since 2009, so it's for 15 years in Catalonia. In the high risk scenario, prisons really are. And this system was taking decisions regarding real people having lots of social consequences and possibly enhancing lots of bias and discrimination to people. Our approach then was to use this concrete use case, RiskAmbi, to reveal how corporations, companies, governments, or anyone has opacity on their systems. We had somehow here on the left RiskAmbi, a deployed legacy AI system in use. We had a greater problem there, which was the algorithmic opacity compounded by the corporate opacity, and we had finally the possible solution. We managed afterwards, this is part of the paper, to create this framework based on the AI Act and ISO to try to make this system explainable. So our question was, how do we make this transparent? We were not trying to change it from scratch. So let me get deeper in what RiskAmbi is. RiskAmbi is a prison assessment system which will provide whoever it uses a risk score. So we had a bunch of data provided by the prison's staff and gathered by them, a black box logistic regression model with which was going to give a score to a person thanks to an input, and the decision taken by a judge. The thing here is, or the key in this slide is that we had a black box model which was given a score. Those phrases may sound a bit worrying because who knew about RiskAmbi? Technical staff knew about RiskAmbi, but a little bit. Judges knew about RiskAmbi, but didn't know how it worked. Inmates even didn't know what RiskAmbi was. So the only ones knowing a bit about the system were the developers, because they knew how did they model it. So, and that asymmetry is the problem we found on this concrete use case. So let's go and try to understand a bit more RiskAmbi. RiskAmbi is a system who had 106 candidate factors drawn from similar systems all over the world, mainly from the Compass US system. And from those 106 pool factors, 10 of them were used for the screening phase and 43 for the full assessment. Since RiskAmbi has two models on it, although we are talking always about one, because it's the same with different configurations. Something tells us that the developers of RiskAmbi were somehow concerned about the ethical implications this kind of system may have in society. So they decided to have 4 protected variables on their system, which were age, sex, criminal status, and nationality. Okay, RiskAmbi then, as previously mentioned, is split into 2 little models, RiskAmbi Screening and RiskAmbi Complete. And how RiskAmbi worked is clearly seen here. Every inmate was evaluated as soon as getting into prison with RiskAmbi Screening, and if the result of RiskAmbi Screening was, if the prison was tagged as high risk prison, RiskAmbi Complete was used for him. If not, it was only used to RiskAmbi Screening, and of course this study was repeated every 6 months in order to try to change those status or those evaluations from inmates. Okay, I want to ask you a question here on this slide regarding the initial 10 variables I was mentioning before. These 10 variables are the ones used in Riscambi screening, and I want you please to try to give me if you find anything interesting on them, something remarkable. Any ideas? Please, Nuria.
For example, the lack of financial resources.
Okay, that's a good one. Any other idea in the room?
Also, the absence of family or social support, since it can reveal social status, like low income or stuff like that.
Okay, you are on the good way. Any other ideas? Okay, hold on. That thought. We will come back to this afterwards. Okay, Riscambi screening, the only thing was, the only aim of Riscambi screening was to see or to get an indicator for these three things we see here, okay? The prison system wanted to know if there was going to be any kind of self-violence risk or institutional violence risk or breach of sentence condition risk for every inmate. And the only answer the model was giving was if it was high or low. Neither numbers, only two tags. It was a binary answer. The thing is that Riscambi was thought to be a human-in-the-loop system, but in reality it wasn't. Only the 3% of the results were overridden. 3% in 15 years were overridden by professionals. What does this mean? That the 97% of the rest of the results were just approved without knowing. Not because they were good results, neither because they were faithful results. It was because no one could challenge the proper system. I mean, the system was only giving 0 or 1. And you cannot contest what you cannot see. Okay, these are some of the variables used in the Riscambi full version. There were 5 sets on it, and I took here some of them in order for you to tell me a bit more now. Anything you see even more worrying than before? Go ahead.
Education level.
Which one, sorry?
Education level.
Education level, okay. Why?
You cannot judge based on education level if somebody.
Okay. Okay, I agree with you. Any other? Carmen?
Distance from residence to prison.
Okay, distance from residence to prison. That's a good one too. Any other ideas?
Low mental ability.
Low mental ability, okay. Any other?
Being a member of a social vulnerable group.
That's the one. We can see here that there are 2 groups there, which are biographical and family and social, that are taking into account not actions, but facts. Things that were from those people in their lives because they were born to in a place. And if we count the whole 43 factors of Riscambi complete, we can see that only these 2 subsets were taking the 40% of the whole data set when taking decisions. So we might think about it as, well, completely biased or possibly completely biased. Riscambi complete was a bit more accurate regarding what its outputs are. With this, prison system wanted to know about risks on prison management. Well, not risks, sorry. They wanted to somehow give privileges to some people regarding the risk factor. And those factors were risk management, conditional release, prison benefits, or rehabilitation plans. And in this case also, we were getting only categorical outputs, which were high risk, medium risk, or low risk in order to get any of these privileges in prison. Again, only the 5% of the results were overridden. So we could say somehow that, summarizing, that every decision taken by the machine was accepted with no discussion. So let's summarize a bit. We had a system that used lots of controversial data. We already seen the 40% of the data set, of the attributes of the data set. A system was almost never challenged, and it directly shaped someone's life. So here, our colleague and philosopher Jesus started to think about, his worries, of course, his professional worries, and he came up with 3 different ethical repercussions. Don't correct me if I don't say it well. If I do not, if you want to come here and say, okay. And those ethical concerns were the 3 ones we have here in the screen: discriminatory outcome, lack of autonomy and individual agency, and the opacity and the collapse of accountability inmates were having. And yeah, these were not hypothetical harms. We already have seen them. Okay, let's get into the discriminatory outcome part. Can you read the inputs there? Those you have been mentioning during the last slides may appear there. We are talking about poor childhood adjustment, about criminal history of family. Family? Why? I mean, lack of educational level or financial hardship. I mean, these are variables that are not showing someone's actions. These variables are showing structural disadvantage. They're showing poverty, they're showing social isolation, they are showing marginalization, which is also okay, it's a fact. But does that really matter when regarding freedom or releasing from prison? The thing here is correlation of data shouldn't be affecting directly to the answer of this, because it's disadvantaging people's lives, not people's actions. Okay, the second one was the lack of autonomy and individual agency. I want you to please take a look at these 2 pink boxes, because these are real testimonies from inmates, which said, you don't know the question asked, will populate the database translated into parameters. No one tells you anything. You answer innocently without realizing. Without realizing what? That their lives could change depending on what they are answering. And the other one said, I didn't know about Triscambi during my time in prison, which also concerns or at least shocks us. So what does this, what does this corporate, because this is a corporate opacity, leads to? To an awareness of those inmates, and of course to the loss of their agencies. This is not an opacity as when we were the same opacity as the previous one. The previous one was the algorithmic opacity. That one came in directly from the algorithm used. This is even worse. This is about corporate opacity. The prison wasn't saying anything to anyone, and they were using a system without knowing anything about it. So imagine an inmate on prison willing to study a new degree or willing to do anything else to try to change that kind of factor in the further 6 months. It would be impossible. I mean, their effort becomes short in dark as soon as they were doing anything, because some of those attributes were not describing actions. And the third one is the lack of opacity and accountability. I have a little question here also, which is, who is responsible in case of Triscambi commits, well, not a crime, but it commits an error? Who do you think it is? I mean, this is the main answer, no? Well, Jesus showed me, it's called the problem of the many hands. Because developers could say, we only build the system. Lawyers could say, we only follow the system's prediction. Or the prison staff could say, we only gather the data, we did nothing else than that. So that responsibility starts deriving into nothing, because no one is responsible in the end. And this brings lots of problems to society, because, I mean, oversight here is completely degraded. And and it also happens to an external auditor. If information is not given to them, it's impossible to see what the system does. And of course, due process is obstructed, as defense lawyers cannot contest the system's answer either. I mean, how can you say, okay, yeah, you have an answer, but why do you have the answer? Why are you condemning my inmate due to that, my client due to that? Tell me, Nuria.
I was wondering if, I can remember the name of if Cambi, blah, blah. If Cambi, the framework, I can remember the name, was designed to be a human-in-the-loop framework, wasn't a human in charge of supervising the outputs? Because if it was, this human should be the responsible, right? Or I'm not a judge.
Yeah, I mean, what we read in the what we read in the audits that were published on the internet was precisely that: who's responsible, the one seeing and the one taking the decision. The thing is that you don't really know, and you don't have any kind of information, but 3 categories: medium, high, or low risk. So if it's, if you have, let's say, a good result somehow, why are you challenging the system? I mean, but the thing is, if someone was changing, those changes were never going to arrive because, well, some attributes were there giving more weight to the decision. So, how can we translate this to the legal aspect? Okay, risk-CAMB is really close to the red line between the high-risk programs and the prohibited practices, because Article 5.1.d says that no one can be profiled due to their personal proxies. They cannot be profiled due to biological or social activities they have. And so we would say that this system itself, it's a prohibited system. Our position when we wrote the paper was to change it a bit. We decided to just remove those 2 categories on the 47th dataset, so we could translate risk-CAMB into the high-risk set and follow working with it. And well, it didn't either pass anything as it was. Only removing those attributes wasn't enough. They needed to have risk management systems, as the article then says, transparency, human oversight, and traceability to only try to get into the high-risk set. The thing is that I've been talking during the whole session about risk-CAMB in the past, because risk-CAMB is nowadays not in use. They are studying it in order to try to put it into that set, into the high-risk set. Will they achieve it? I don't really know. I see it difficult, but someone in the room could think, okay, but why aren't we trying to comply in any other way? Why only using the AI Act? That's a good question, and that's also something I asked myself a year ago. And I tried somehow to do the same experimentation with ISO 42001, which is the one of artificial intelligence systems. But it would even be impossible also to get that certification, that quality certification for the system as it is. So presumption of conformity could never be either invoked. So what did we do in order to try to make this explainable? We used Marilyn Bello et al.'s article. Paco provided me about this article. And we tried to somehow split that black box into different explainability layers. We decided to set 3 layers here: the algorithmic layer, using SHAP, for example, in order to get which of the variables were the ones having more weight in the decision-taking moment. So the technical staff was aware and could see the reasoning behind that decision. Then we thought about the human-centered layer in order to give those prison professionals, lawyers, judges, everyone involved, any other stakeholder involved, adaptability, usefulness, and interactivity with the system so they could enjoy about the benefits of it, knowing the reason of the answers. And then we had the social layer in order to try to clearly and fairly, of course, give the inmate information they could understand to make changes and to act in consequence to try to get those privileges. But this is not the final part of it, because that seems to be one static action to be taken. But the thing is that, as Paco previously mentioned lots of days, explainability and trustworthy is not the thing of one day. It's not checking into a list once. So we also borrowed Paco's article. I always borrow Paco's articles. And we required somehow Riscambi to stay always in a loop, in a governance loop. How? Splitting stakeholders into red and blue and giving them different responsibilities. The technical staff was responsible of the technical data drift, about risk representation, to refine explanation mechanisms, and to adapt new data and priorities depending on the social movements or in the society's evolution. And then we decided that prison guards, judges, psychologists, everyone had to assess under stability of the information they were getting, to review fairness and legitimacy, and to check legal or ethical alignment as soon as it was evolving the situation. So somehow with that we were trying to monitor, to review the system on the fly, to update it and to reassess those inmates which tasks were unfair in the moment the system was being used. But well, I'm almost getting into the final part of my presentation, and I want to go a step backwards and somehow forget a bit about Riscambi, because this is also in order for you to know on how this work achieved. We achieved to do this in a really simple way because we were people from really different areas, and we knew, Jesus knew a lot of philosophy, Dorleta knew a lot of information about social science. The thing here is that it would have been impossible without those perspectives. So as soon as, as mature the AI gets, we're going to start to see synergies between different learning concepts, learning paths. For example, we published our paper here on AI and Society in the Springer magazine, but there are many others. It exists AI and Law, Big Data and Society, Technology and Society. We are in a moment in which AI has got that mature that we need people who tries to challenge it, but with other perspectives, with other ideas. So, this is my little key message here. I want somehow to try to mix those kind of ideas to get new works really easily somehow. And I want to end up my presentation with the phrase you have here. It's the phrase we used at the end of our paper also, because AI is not only about doing a system that works well and deploying it, and that's all. AI nowadays changes lives and generates lots of consequences, socially speaking. So we as developers would have to somehow do that kind of internal exercise and think that when a person's future hangs in the balance, leaving the last word to a machine cannot grasp human vulnerability and may leave scars too deep in society. We have to somehow be aware that anything we do at work, at home, wherever, will have consequences. And sometimes we forget about that. And I keep open to any question anyone has, and thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Oier, please, question. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so my question is, here what you do with Riscambi is a post-mortem, like something went wrong, you know it, and then you propose how to fix the problem. Now, in the situation that this algorithm was still running and somebody were to audit, for example, they will check whether they comply or not with human oversight. And still, they can go and say, no, we have a human in the loop, a person checking that models make correct decisions. Here, you appoint that only a really small percentage of the decisions were overridden by humans, and that meant that people still say, like, do not understand the model, and they're just accepting whatever. But also, maybe the person, if they were asked to ask that person, like, are you truly understanding the model? And they will just say, no, the model has a really good accuracy, and there is no problem with it. And so how do you detect that they are complying in an audit with human oversight in this situation?
Okay, let me ask you a question. If you only have one answer, I mean high or low, and you get that as valid, are you challenging the model? Do you know the reason behind that answer? If you are enough consist to show with SHAP, for example, okay, this is yes because this person killed 2 people. This is a high-risk person. Then you have an evidence behind that can prove that the system is doing their work well. But if you don't have in neither that, that idea or that number, you can never say. So you cannot challenge the system. You cannot answer. You cannot justify your decision.
Okay, so in that case, the auditor will ask, even if you agree with the machine, you will need further evidence.
Of course.
To say, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the AI Act says that you have to get sufficient transparency of the model when you want to deploy it, which is okay. But you have first to determine what's sufficiently transparent and then act in consequence. For example, here, sufficiently transparent could be getting the reason, for example, the ranking of the variables ordered in the probability in order to get the target, for example.
Yeah. Okay, so but in this case, they use, if I remember well, a logistic regression, which is one of the even considered interpretable models because it's a simple model. So wouldn't that be enough for the institution to say, no, the model is interpretable by design, so then it's not necessary of anything else?
As always, in bureaucracy, you need to prove it. You need a log. You need a reason. You need to justify yourself. Not only in technology, in life. Nuri, you were going to tell me something.
My question, thank you so much. My question was, when you mentioned that there were, you had a slide with the inputs, and there were some obvious problems with those inputs. And I wanted to know if you know or anybody knows who came up with this inputs and what did they base their decision?
We only know that those variables came from a pool that was set by the developers in 2009, and we know nothing more than that. Because we only found auditing reports on the internet. I mean, we didn't have the information given by the Catalonians prison system or whatever. But yeah, I mean, what sounded weird to me was that, okay, let's use as protected attributes gender, nationality. But then, if I live close to the prison, I will be targeted as high risk, for example.
It seemed like they picked the obvious one, but we think it's just an arbitrary decision. Probably they just grab a whole bunch of.
I would say it was a conscious decision. Okay. I guess I would say that person had something in mind to think that was relevant. Although for me, there's no chance to see that relevant.
Yeah, I agree with you. I was just wondering if there was some research behind this or some reason behind it. You just said this is what we're doing and that's it. There was
publicly at least, and a year ago when we did this, no.
Thank you.
Thank you. According to your question, I want to say I don't think it's good to use this kind of qualification, but as far as I know, it's proven that one of the main, not the reason, but triggers for teenagers' violence is different parent roles. That has proven in psychology. So maybe that's the reason of some of the. I'm not saying that that's good, but maybe they had a reason based on something. That was not my question, just a comment. I want to say that thank you. I really liked your presentation. I think it's very
More
important.
than last year's?
Sure. This year you will gonna be the winner. You would be the winner, not last year.
I don't need any other backup.
No, but I think that it's so important the message that you said at the end, because as you said, AI we use it in our daily lives, and it can be so important. For example, if it changed human lives. So all of us in this room, I guess, as AI expert, I think we have to go outside and not stay in our office and collaborate with people in order to do AI for good. That's just a comment, and congratulations for you. But I have some questions. They are just for my curiosity. It's okay, don't worry, Oier. You said in 2 times the percentage of cases in which someone, a judge, I guess, changed the output of the algorithm in order to take the decision, right?
Yeah, they
you said
can
that
override.
3% or something like that.
Yeah.
But do you have any insight about the distribution of the outputs?
No.
You don't, because
it
they
was
are no.
It was neither set. I mean, we only
Really?
knew, because look, this was, this started because we found a report on the internet of an auditing that Ethicas INC did.
Oh, wow.
And they were saying that, but the thing is that the judge is not the only one overriding the decision anyone could do. But the thing is that as nobody could justify why they didn't do it.
Yeah, but I was wondering because maybe the vast majority of the times risk can be set the low risk. So because it's not the same to give privilege to someone that doesn't deserve it, that not giving privileges to someone who deserves it. So maybe if risk can be was biases in that
risk can be was
sense.
more. Risk can be was lax in order to give in order to try not to get risks, not to get unnecessary risks.
Okay, so it
was maybe targeting someone who was doing good things in order to get a permit to go outside for days, but it was saying, okay, no, this person is high risk.
So maybe as a default it said no, so okay, that's worse in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah. I don't know about law, but in
true.
my opinion this is worse. And the final question for me, you said that they stopped using RiskCanby. When and do you know why? So because of the new laws, or
when? I'll tell you when, and it's when the AI Act started to begin. I think it was during 2021.
So it was forced to stop working. It wasn't because of
I'm not sure because the AI Act
motivation.
didn't enter by force in law, but it's true that it may be casualty. I don't know.
I don't think
but, so. Well, maybe also the report Ethicas did was like a way of criticizing the system, and that also made it stop. But it's neither written anywhere.
And do you know if they are trying to adjust this RiskCanby in order to be used as
far as I know, yes.
They are trying to. And do they contact you because of your paper? Because you are trying the same thing?
No.
No. Maybe you can call them.
No.
Okay. Any other questions? No?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, my pleasure.